and let me share my screen?
Yeah, Bonnie, let her share her screen. Wait, let's introduce her first so we can see her.
I agree. Good morning, everybody. Opportunity to hear more about, and I like what I heard it called the Date the Rate program. It's the 2-in-1 buy down from Paige Zecher. We have been friends now. We figured it out for 9 years. And she was a realtor, so she understands exactly what we go through as a realtor, how the timelines work, how the stress can be if it's getting down to the wire. She understands exactly how important the communication aspect is with not just your buyers and your buyer's agent, but also the listing agent and the sellers. So she also goes out of her way to look for out-of-the-box ways to help your clients get into a home. So without further ado, Paige Zecher with Thrive Mortgage. Take it away.
Thank you, Bonnie. And I am so excited to be able to share this with you guys. You may have been getting emails, seeing on social media, all about the 2-1 buy down. And I want to talk to you about what is it, how does it work, who is it for, what is it not, and help you guys sell some more homes. How does that sound?
Sounds wonderful.
All right, let me just jump. I'm going to jump right in and share my screen. What was that, Daniel?
I said phenomenal. I just want to get it straight because I have been getting hit with a lot of the misinfo.
I mean, and I get it. I see it too. So let's take a look. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Let's see if I can get this to work. It worked before I got on Zoom. Here we go. All right. Everybody knows the market has shifted. We have a new market. New markets require new strategies. And this is not a new strategy. This is actually a strategy that's been around for a while. Those of us that have been in this market for a number of years, and I started selling real estate in the mid-1990s, and seller concessions were very commonplace. They were very commonplace until just really in the last few years. And so asking the seller to negotiate, asking the seller for concessions is nothing new. This 2-1 buy down that we're talking about is also nothing that's new. I can remember back in the day when this was a really big thing for builders to offer. But again, a shifting market is a new market, and we've got to come up with strategies to help our clients win. So let's jump in and take a look at what that might be. Which is better for your clients, both buyer and seller? A price reduction or a seller credit?
Seller credit.
Seller credit.
So let's look at how we can use that seller credit for the 2-1 buy down. So like Bonnie said, I like calling this the date the rate strategy, because where we're at right now with rates, and we're going to take a look at maybe when rates may come down. Rates are so much higher now than what we've seen in the recent past, and everybody, all of the market experts are suggesting that rates are going to come down sometime in the near to immediate near future. So sometime in the next 12 to 24 months, could be as soon as the next 3 or 4 months. So we've heard the term marry the house, date the rate. So date the rate means when those rates come down, you're going to refinance. But what do you do in the interim? So who is this for? This is for first-time home buyers, builders, listings that have been lingering, and a seller that may be contemplating a price reduction. I want you to be thinking as we're talking, who might benefit from this? Think about the buyers that were looking at homes back the first of the year. They were looking in the spring, and they just simply didn't want to compete. They weren't in a position, or whether financially or just from a mindset, that they were not willing to be competing with all of these other buyers and go in and make these offers tens of thousands of dollars over list price. Who are those buyers that just sat the market out waiting for kind of that market crash or waiting for the market to cool down? This is a perfect strategy for those folks. Be thinking about maybe the sellers that decided not to put their house on the market because they didn't know where they were going to go. Now is still a great opportunity. It's a seller's market. Like Bonnie's stats show us, it's still a seller's market. It's a great opportunity for them to get the most money that they could have possibly gotten for their house and buy in a less competitive market. And then also be thinking about if you list builders spec homes. This is a fantastic strategy for builders to be able to use to help buyers get into the house without reducing the price and compromising the neighborhood comps. What is the seller 2-1 buy down? What are you guys hearing?
That's a 1-year program. I've heard it multiple times, and we talked about this the other day, multiple times that it's a 1-year only program.
And there is a 1-1 buy down, which would be the case. So the 2-1 buy down is a 2-year program, and it is not unlike, so the name of it is a little bit confusing. So you've got a seller buy down, a buyer can buy down their rate with discount points, and then you've got the 2-1 buy down. I understand why there's so much confusion. So the 2-1 buy down is not discount points charged to the seller. That is the permanent buy down. What this is a temporary rate buy down. There's the 1-1 buy downs, there's a 2-1 buy down, there's 3-1 buy downs. And that first number just means it's how many points is it coming down. It could also mean how many years this temporary buy down takes place. It is a seller subsidy for the difference between the actual rate and the discounted rate. The amount of money that the seller is contributing actually goes into an escrow account, and that difference is being paid on the buyer's behalf. It will make more sense when we look at it in just a moment. Does that help kind of clarify or not yet?
It'll make more sense, I think, in a minute.
Okay, why is this something that you might want to consider? Buyers buy the monthly payment. They live with that monthly payment. They are not living with the price that they paid for the house. There was a survey done, and I forget how many thousands of people were part of this survey, and said the number one factor that buyers took into consideration in the home that they bought was the monthly payment. So like we were talking about earlier, where our memories get shorter, chances are likely 5 years down the road, you're not even going to remember what price you paid for the house, but you know what price you're paying on a monthly basis. So why use this strategy? It's for those clients that monthly payment is their number one concern or focus. It is a win-win for the buyer and the seller. The seller keeps more money in their pocket, and the buyer gets a larger monthly savings benefit. We'll take a look at that a little more detail in a second. A couple other things to know about the seller buy down. One, rather than reducing the price of the house, it is keeping the comps highest, keeping the value integrity in those neighborhoods. So if you are farming a neighborhood, and I know Bonnie's got a neighborhood that she farms. So if you're farming a neighborhood, the last thing you want to do is be that agent that is coming in and slashing prices. You want to be getting those sellers the most money possible for their homes, right? So this 2-1 buy down could be used as a counter when you get those lowball offers. It must be paid by the seller. Unlike a discount point rate buy down that a buyer can pay or the seller can pay, the 2-1 buy down must be paid for by the seller. This is not something that the buyer can pay for. And it does not increase the buyer's affordability. They are qualifying on the higher rate. So here's just a sample calculator. Let me pull up my actual calculator real quick. I think this is where it's going to help come together. Can y'all see this?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to come down here. You've got let's see. I've got a loan amount. That's not what I wanted. Give me 1 second. Let me get the right number in there.
Good morning, Cody.
All right. If you have got a seller, let's say the purchase price is $450 and the buyer's putting 10% down. It's going to give you a loan amount of $405. Today's rate for a buyer with excellent credit, putting 10% down, 30-year conventional straight loan, 7.625. 30 years, here's their principal and interest payment, $28.66. Of course, you're going to have taxes and insurance on top of that. Those numbers are going to change depending on, where they buy. So we're just looking at principal and interest. So year one, effective interest rate is 2 points. So hence the 2-1 buy down. So year one, that effective rate is 2% less than the actual rate. So their payment's going to be based on 5.625. Their monthly payment, instead of 28.66, their monthly payment is 23.31.41. The seller is subsidizing $535.16 of that monthly payment of this. They're going to do it for 12 months. Here's the yearly subsidy amount. And then year two, so month 13 through 24, that rate goes up. It's only 1% less than this actual rate. Makes their monthly payment go up a little bit. The monthly subsidy, this amount, is going to be for 12 months. Here's the yearly subsidy. This number right here is $97.01 is the amount that the seller is subsidizing. That's the amount that you would need to negotiate in concessions. Does that make sense?
Yes. Now, does this hit any limits, like the 3 and 6% limits of loans?
I am so glad you asked that. I'm going to jot this number down real quick because I need to change something else in a moment. Okay.
And are they still qualifying for the higher rate?
They are still qualifying for the higher rate because year come that 25th month, if they've not refinanced, that rate goes to the actual rate, whatever rate they locked in at when they closed on their loan. So they are qualifying on the higher rate. That is why I mentioned a couple minutes ago that this does not change their affordability because they are having to qualify on that higher rate. So Dan, perfect segue into what's the maximum that the seller can pay. So on a conventional loan, It depends on how much the buyer is putting down. If they're putting down between 3 and up to 10%, the maximum seller credit is 3%. Between 10 and 25%, it's 6%. If they're putting 25% or more down, maximum seller credit is 9%. The numbers get to be pretty significant when you start running the numbers. The buy down is the same. That rate buy down is the same. Those don't change. But let's say the seller wants to pay 6%, or you're able to negotiate for your borrower or your buyer a larger seller concession. Part of it can go to that rate buy down and closing cost. So it can be split up. It doesn't all have to be used. The seller, the 2-1 buy down, those numbers are fixed just because it is a seller subsidy for the difference in interest rate. FHA, maximum credit for FHA, 6%, VA is 4%, USDA is 6%. There's different types of rates. So different types of loans. You've got typically over the last, really since 2009, the 30-year fixed rate or 15-year fixed rate loan has been most prominent. Prior to 2008 and 9, we saw a whole lot of ARMs or adjustable rate mortgages. Those are making a little bit of a comeback. I am not a huge fan of them because they're tied to an index, not the mortgage-backed securities. They're typically tied to a different index that moves differently than the market does, and they just set people up for some struggles if they're not prepared for those rate hikes. Or there is the 2-1 seller buy down or date the rate loan strategy.
And this is, the ARM is going to most likely go up. This is kind of betting against the idea that interest might come down in your refi. Another thing that changes this is that whatever that number was, $9,700, whatever, for that $288 a month payment. If you were able to make that $288 month payment and pay extra for the principal of that, that might easily shift over the life of the loan to be $25,000 or $30,000 versus it'd be more than that. It'd be more than that at an interest rate like that. You'd pay the loan off in 20 years. Just by putting that big chunk at the front of and paying the mortgage, paying the full number.
And I can actually show people exactly what that would look like if they were to take that savings and apply that, still make that $2,800 principal and interest payment, but take that savings and apply that towards a principal reduction. I can show them exactly how many years that takes off the loan. And it's staggering. It is actually mind-blowing when you take a look at that. So let's look at these different loans side by side. So let's take a look at full price, no seller concession, purchase price of $450,000, loan amount $405, just today's market rate. Here is your payment, $34.35 versus, let's say, buyers only know to reduce the price. When buyers go, this house is not as affordable as I want it to be. Think about price reduction as well. I'm talking to you as though a buyer is going to come in and negotiate, but this could also be those lingering listings, and the seller is thinking, or you, the listing agent, is thinking, we need a price reduction to make this home more affordable for the buyer. And that's really, and I talked to so many buyers that before we put together a pre-approval letter, I want to know, what are you thinking about going in and offering on this house? Because I want to make the pre-approval letter match that offer. So when somebody says, well, the list price is $450, but I'm going to go in and ask the seller for a price reduction, my first question to them is, what are you hoping to accomplish with that? Are you wanting a lower monthly payment, or are you trying to save some cash out of pocket? Usually, the buyer is really wanting to get a more affordable monthly payment. What they don't realize is actually how much that is or isn't going to benefit them. But this second column shows you what that would actually be. So let's say they go in and they ask for a 3% price reduction. That is $13,500 off of the price. Loan amount, they're still paying market interest rate. That's going to save them $99, a little less than $100 a month. Not bad. But let's see what the 2-1 buy down. And this would be for the first year. That first year, they're paying full price for the house, but they're getting 2% less their interest rate. So their effective monthly payment, $28.99. That's huge. These payments, what we looked at on that Excel spreadsheet was principal and interest only. What I'm showing you here is PITI. So $2,800, that is a $535 a month savings versus full price, no seller concession. Anybody else think that's significant to the buyer? Versus here's your permanent buy down. This is if the seller paid discount points to get that rate down right here for this number here. Look over here. So the 3% price reduction, let's look at the cost of the seller. 3% price reduction is exactly that, $13,500. The cost of the seller, this number, let me go back. this number really needs to change. This number here should be 9,700, but this permanent buy down to get this rate as of today, the cost actually getting this rate a little over 13,000. So just shy of that 3%, but it's going to save the buyer the life of the loan, not just the first couple of years. The permanent buy down is good for that buyer that thinks they may not refinance. That would save them $306. But here's the difference in cost to the seller. So the least amount of cost to the seller has the largest benefit for the buyer. Do you see why this could be beneficial both for the buyer and the seller?
What are the qualifications to be able to do that?
Great question, Cody. It is whatever loan the borrower qualifies for. The only thing this doesn't work for is a jumbo loan. It could possibly work depending on the particular investor of that loan, that jumbo loan, but for the most part, this is for any kind of conforming loan, conventional FHA, VA, USDA.
So what you're saying is you're saying split it, right? Is that what you're saying here? 2-1 buy down and then do the permanent buy down, or are you still just?
No, I'm just showing you the comparison.
Okay.
So the 2-1 buy down is not necessarily the right program for somebody. The permanent buy down helps the affordability.
And it goes on to the life of the loan.
And it is the life of the loan.
That's a lot better in the end. I mean, by far.
It is. So
everything has its places, right? Like when we were doing a lot of those adjustable rate mortgages and interest-only loans, there were people buying some giant houses and they were paying triple the payment every month. And in like 9 years, they had their house paid off before it ever would balloon. I mean, right. Everything has its payment. You just got to, or its usability. You just got to figure out what that use is for.
Right.
But it seems to me, over life of 306 might be a better jump. But if they're just trying to save a little bit of money, a couple dinners out a month.
So let's talk about who would benefit from one versus the other. The 2-1 buy down. Atlanta does a lot of corporate relocation. I used to do a lot of corporate relocation business. Those buyers they were going to be in that home 18 to 24 months tops, and then they were out of there. You've got other folks that maybe they've got some debt that they want to pay off. Maybe they want to use the savings for a principal reduction. Maybe they're just that negotiator that just wants something. They want that seller to give up something. This 2-1 buy down is going to be their biggest bang in the first 2 years. My problem with the 2-1 buy down is what happens if those people lose their job? What happens if they change their job and they go from salary to commission? What if they are not able to refinance? The nice thing with the 2-1 buy down versus the ARM, 2-1 buy down, you know what the rate's going to be. It's not a guess because it is a fixed rate product. But you've got the permanent buy down that if you've got a buyer that is struggling with affordability, or maybe I was the only one that had these clients, that you would take them out and you go look at $400,000 homes, but they're sending you all the Zillow, Realtor.com listings that were $425, $430, $450. Anybody else have those buyers?
Mm-mm.
The permanent rate down, buy down, you are qualifying them, or I am qualifying them based on the rate that's being bought down. So in like this particular scenario, they are qualifying at this lower rate because that is a permanent rate buy down. So it's going to help that buyer buy more house, and they know what that rate is going to be for the long term. They know exactly what it's going to be. Maybe they're paying a little bit higher than if rates were to drop, but they don't have to wonder, am I going to be able to refinance? This is also a really good program for those of us that work on commission. Maybe heading into the recession, maybe you don't make as much money in the next 2 years and are not able to refinance. So this is great. The permanent buy down is really great for those people that want to know exactly what that payment is going to be every single month, whether they refinance or not. Here's the monthly savings equivalent of both of these buy downs. So the 2-1 buy down, that first year, the equivalent of buying the house for $385,000, $65,000 discount price benefit to the buyer, or monthly payment benefit to the buyer. But for the seller, it's $9,700. $9,700 cost to the buyer, or cost to the seller, $65,000 cost benefit to the buyer.
Huge negotiation over $9,700.
Right.
Huge.
So then you've got the permanent buy down is the equivalent of that buyer buying the house instead of for $450. It's the equivalent of them buying it for $420. That's a $30,000 price savings. That's also really huge. So for that savvy negotiator, when they're able to see that this is your monthly savings equivalent, of getting that house for $65,000 less or $30,000 less. That is a win-win for both the buyer and the seller.
How would you word this in the contract?
Great question. Seller to pay up to 3% towards buyers, closing cost, discount points, and prepaids.
Same as you would anything else, because the loan actually isn't, the loan could switch around or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you would still put seller concessions in the closing, like the closing cost. That's what this is equating to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And the way the Georgia contract is written, you do have to come up whatever that 3% number is, or however much you're negotiating. Come up with whatever that number is, and it's based on the purchase price. Let's take a look at what's going on with rates. The biggest influence in people's rates, people think, is their credit score, how much they're putting down, or the type of loan, or even from one lender to the next.
Which is next week's call, right? We're still doing that?
We are.
What is comprises the credit score?
Yep. The biggest influence over the interest rate that somebody is going to pay is the bond market. It is mortgage-backed securities. This is the bond market as of this morning. This is a 2-year look at the bond market. And I know Bonnie trades Forex. She and I have done a lot of education on learning to read these charts. I can tell you green is good, red is bad. You see these great big huge candles. I locked a loan on this particular day. The buyer was really upset with me when I locked it up here. We had a huge drop in January. Mortgage-backed securities, when bonds are high, rates are low. When bonds are low, rates are high. They have an inverse relationship. So back 2 years ago, bond prices were high. They were high because the government was buying mortgage-backed securities. Fast forward, they were remaining pretty consistent here. We had this huge candle. We had huge news here in January. This was the start of interest rates going up. Let me go back. So look at this. We had a huge drop in the bond market prices. This is where we are this morning. We're at a 2-year low in bond market pricing. That means interest rates, when this is low, rates are high. So if somebody was out shopping for a house, or they're talking to their best friend or their neighbor, they bought a house, maybe they bought a house back in March, and they're like, wait a minute, my credit is better. I'm putting more money down. Why am I paying so much more in interest than my neighbor or my friend did? Well, bond prices were so much higher back the first of the year, that meant interest rates were lower. The million-dollar question right now is, when will rates come down? I can tell you 100% when rates will come down. They're going to come down when inflation comes down, because mortgage interest rates follow inflation. Here's what was going on. This right here is the consumer price index. This is what we use to determine what is the inflation rate. So you can see we had a little fluctuation over the last couple of years. Consumer price index came down here. This is meaning that inflation was coming down. We saw inflation go up. Look at this steep. Here's January. That's where we just saw that great big candle. Look how steeply they went up.
What happened though? What happened? What exactly happened in January?
That caused inflation to go up, or caused rates?
To cause inflation to go up. Like, how did it just go from one thing just straight up? Like, what do we do to do that?
There's a lot of things that go into it. Just look at what's happening globally. Supply and demand issues, the war in Ukraine, oil prices, all kinds of things going on that are driving the inflation. We had, during this time, the Fed funds rate was virtually at zero. It was right in here that we started increasing the Fed funds rate, or I guess it wasn't here, it was after it had gone up a little bit. But see what was going on. You can see through here, this is interest rates. This is the 30-year fixed rate. So you can see that when inflation, in whatever direction the inflation is going in, mortgage rates roughly follow it, except for this period of time right here. This is a period of time right here. The government was artificially buying mortgage-backed securities to keep rates low. This right here is COVID. This is the period of COVID that the Fed was trying to keep the housing market and mortgage rates low, keep the market stable. What they should have done is stopped artificially buying those bonds to let the interest rates more closely follow inflation. But what has happened once they stopped doing that, that was when rates took off. Does this make sense? Have y'all ever seen this before?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow. You can overlay other charts as well. You know, with oil and everything else.
Yeah, it is really fast. I could look. The funny thing is, I was never like into charts and stats until the last few years, and it was like it just clicked how it all ties together.
You can geek out on this kind of stuff for real.
Oh my gosh, big time. So let's take a look at the Consumer Price Index. This is a year-over-year number, and it's a lagging indicator. So they just came out with August numbers, but it's being compared to August of last year. August of last year was where it was at the bottom. So of course, those numbers are going to be, the comparison between the two is going to be big. That September number is going to be a big gap between where we're at now versus where we were at a year ago. But inflation really jumped in October. So once this is about a 2-month lag time. So as we move in towards the end of the year, first of next year, the comparison is not going to be as dramatic. So that's going to mean inflation is going to cool off a little bit just because the comparison is less. It's going to look like inflation is cooling off. The Fed has continued to raise the Fed funds rate, which is helping to cool things off. When that inflation comes down, when those inflation numbers come down, the mortgage rates will follow. So we start to see some improvement in inflation, maybe Q1 next year, maybe Q2, we're going to see interest rates follow. That is setting us up for a refinance down the road, hence the date, the rate loan strategy. Before we get into that, one question that I haven't heard anybody ask is, so the seller pays that 2-1 buy down, that $9,700. What happens if that's a 2-year subsidy? What happens if they refinance, say, in 8 months? What happens to that money? That money is actually sitting in escrow. We are holding that money in escrow so that if the buyer refinances or they sell the house, that money gets applied, whatever money is remaining in that escrow account gets applied to the principal balance. So that money is the buyer's. They've always got 100% benefit of it.
So as far as the contract is concerned, how do you stipulate the 2-1 money's being paid? As closing cost or under special steps?
It's closing costs.
It's closing cost?
Yep. And I mean, if you wanted to put in, let me think about that. If you wanted to put a special stipulation in that it is to be used, because really the 2-1 buy down is how the loan gets structured.
Right. So it really shouldn't affect how the seller perceives it. It's money out of their pocket.
Yeah.
Right. It's a seller concession, and it's how the buyer wants to use it. So if you're specifying that
closing cost discount points the same way you do any other seller thing. I wouldn't dig down in the weeds of the two.
No, I wouldn't either. I just with your conversation, it was just okay.
Let me wrap this up real quick. So other ways that we could possibly help buyers, just to be thinking. So we've already talked about the permanent buy down, which increases the affordability. You can also, for those buyers that are not monthly payment sensitive, but maybe they're just lacking the cash necessary to close. Maybe they want to keep some of the money back to be able to do some repairs or updates. You can use those seller concessions to pay closing costs. We also offer renovation loans, construction loans, statement loans for self-employed borrowers, investor cash flow loans for people that are wanting to buy investment properties. We've got a lot of other loan products that are outside the box to be able to help buyers get into houses. And that's it. Thank you so much.
What a great job.
This was helpful.
You did a great job.
Thank you, Paige.
I don't even have to edit this stuff and put this in it because you already did my job for me.
I know we're over time. Any questions?
Yeah. Who's Barry?
Oh, Barry Habib. Barry Habib is the crystal ball winner for like 3 of the last 5 years. He is the market guru for what's going on in the real estate market and the mortgage market. He's the founder of MBS Highway.
So in a nutshell, we can use this 2-1 and other things together, like permanent rate or no?
You actually can.
Okay, because that's the only part I didn't understand at the end of this.
Yeah.
Well, cool beans.
Yep. You can use it in combination with, if you get a 6% seller concession, if the buyer's doing an FHA loan or putting more money down, you can use it to buy the rate down some more. You can use it towards closing cost or a combination of all three.
Because somebody just sold their house 6 months ago, say they've been renting or something or waiting on something to happen, this is what makes it happen. They got this cash in their pocket. Now they can go and put down more money and get kind of the money back, through this program's combination of the two. Thank you. Next week, we're talking about what makes up your credit score. We're going to solve the mystery.
And Daniel, I will email you that spreadsheet so you can figure out how much money you need to negotiate with the seller to cover that 2-1 buy down.
And like we said, you said, what did you call it? Shock you? Not shock. You said something else. What was your other word? Wasn't shock. Stark or something. Anyway, that money, if you were able to keep paying that same $288 a month, have the buy down, have the rate, put it in, pay the mortgage down faster, would be a tremendous savings over time. That would be a great thing to see in a spreadsheet as well. You can play with it, time value of money.
I can send you. I'll
send
you
it
that
on.
as well.
I sit and play with that kind of stuff all day. Thanks, guys, for being here.
Thank you. Y'all have a great day.
You as well.
I'll be sharing insightful and informative videos on stress-free retirement, being your own bank, setting up college funds, understanding Social Security, wills, probate, trust, and how the Fed Reserve rate hikes affect your mortgage rates. And always, real estate solutions. I'm your go-to expert in real property. Look for my YouTube channel, living in Canton, Georgia, where it is sunny as can be right now. If you find value here, please like and share so others might as well. Remember, I'm not a videographer, not a video editor. I just want to share the most important info with you guys. Each video has a full version of around half hour or so, but there are multiple shorts of only 5 minutes or less as well. My name, Daniel Klopfelter. My area of specialty is real estate and asset protection for more than 25 years. So why am I exhorting you to view financial-based videos on a real estate channel? Good question. I believe that we all do better when we know better, which is why I'm here to expose you to a team of experts who know the topics that matter most. All of these topics work in unison. Full disclosure, I receive nothing for doing these videos other than the satisfaction of adding value to you. So smash that like button already. What are you waiting for? Share this so other people can see it. Y'all have a great day.